All right, everyone, welcome to the HMIS Data Standards Updates and Local Policy Updates training session. This training is going to cover not only updates to our local policies, but also some federal updates to the HUD HMIS data standards. So for starters, I wanted to introduce our team members that we have on the call today, some of whom will be sharing some content with you, and some of whom will be behind the scenes. So my name is Nina Gall. I am the HMIS manager. I'll pass it off to Ashley.
Hi everyone, my name is Ashley Boyer. I'm the new HMIS Security and
Oh,
Compliance
Ashley, we are
Specialist.
having a little bit of trouble hearing you. Unless it's just me, it might just be me.
Nope. Uh-oh. Any luck now?
Is anybody else able to hear Ashley?
It's good
Somebody
now.
give me, yes? Okay,
Okay.
so it's just me then. Okay, that's all right. We will adjust. Okay, so Ashley, I am so sorry. Go ahead. And if you did not finish introducing yourself, please go ahead and finish.
I'm just going to go ahead and start over. My name is Ashley Boyer. I'm the new HMIS Security and Compliance Specialist. I'll call it there.
Okay, I see that Ashley has stopped talking. I'm going to assume that means she is finished. I'm going to have to run without audio today, guys. I apologize. Um, next up, we have Rohan.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Rohan Samuel, and I'm the HMIS Business Systems Analyst.
All right, Sophie.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sophie Barron, and I am the training coordinator.
Thank you, Sophie. Trey.
Hello, everybody. My name is Trey Howard, and I am the HMIS Application Support Specialist.
Thank you, Trey. Juanita.
Hi, good morning, guys. My name is Juanita Garcia, and I am the new data quality analyst.
Thank you, Juanita. Lori.
Good morning. My name is Lori Stewart, and I am the new HMIS Senior Data Analyst.
Thank you, Lori. And Spencer.
Hi, I'm Spencer Walker. I'm the new HMIS System Administrator.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. So that is our HMIS team. We are your friendly neighborhood HMIS administrators. We are responsible for any and everything HMIS related, whether you're having trouble logging in, if you need a report updated, if you're having any difficulties exporting CSV files, SSVF files, if you need to set up a new project because you have a new funding source, anything and everything, we are the ones that will be helping you out. All right, so what we have for you today, we have a series of updates that we want to introduce you to, and these updates are all going to go live on October 1st. So the first portion of the training is going to cover some policies and procedures, our local policies, our local monitoring process. So those you won't physically see any changes in HMIS, but there are going to be some changes to our processes and our policies that will affect you guys. The second portion of the training is going to be a little bit lengthier, and that's where we're going to cover all of the changes that you will actually see in HMIS. So we are currently on the 2020 version of the data standards, and we have to stay on the 2020 version of the data standards all the way up until September 30th to remain in compliance. Now, on October 1st, we have to be on the fiscal year 2022 updated version. So what we're going to do is on the evening of September 30th at 8 p.m., we are going to bring down the system momentarily. You can expect it to be down anywhere from about 30 minutes to an hour while we plug in those updates. And when we bring back the system, when the next time you log in, you will see the updated version of HMIS, and it will be in compliance with the 2022 data standards. So Keep an eye out for that. That will happen on the evening of September 30th. So keep that in mind. It's very important that we implement the changes on September 30th to make sure that we are in compliance with the 2020, with the fiscal year 2020 version all the way up until the 30th. And then on October 1st, we are in compliance with the 2022 data standards. Now, all of the documents that we are going to go over today will be made available on our HMIS website. At the moment, the HMIS website contains our current versions, which are the 2020 data standards and the 2020 policies and procedures and data quality plan. So I'm going to send a link into the chat right now that'll take you to our HMIS website, where you will be able to find all of the current documents as well as all of the updated documents when they are available. And that's where you can always find all of our local HMIS documents, any documents that you might need that are related to our local community as well as federal policies. So let's go ahead and jump right in. A few reminders. We do hope that you'll turn your cameras on if you are able to. I see a couple of faces in the audience already, which is wonderful. We like to see you guys, get to know you a little bit. This is the first time that we are conducting these training sessions virtually rather than in person. So we want to still be able to kind of see you guys and make it as friendly and inviting as possible. And turning cameras on does help that out. So we have all of our cameras on so you can see us, and we can say hi to you throughout the presentation. As I mentioned earlier, we do have all microphones muted except during the Q&A sessions, just to prevent any background noise on the recording. But we do still encourage you to ask questions. So feel free to jot down any questions that you might have. You're welcome to use the chat feature to plug them into the chat box at any time throughout the presentation. And when we get to the Q&A session, we'll read over any questions that have come into the chat box. During the Q&A session, we will also encourage you to unmute yourself and ask your question aloud if you prefer. So we have two different options for you to ask questions throughout the presentation. Just to give you an overview of what you can expect from this presentation, we are going to start with our local policies and procedures. Ashley is going to go over some of the updates that we recently made to those documents that are going to go into effect on October 1st. Next, Rohan is going to cover our data quality monitoring plan, as well as an exciting sneak preview of something that we have coming up for you guys. And then I will be covering the fiscal year 2022 HUD data standards updates. Those are the updates that are going to go into effect on October 1st. And then we have a few stopping points throughout the presentation to pause and give you an opportunity to ask any questions. We are going to be covering a lot of content today in a short period of time, so we're going to be stopping pretty frequently to give you some time to digest the information that we are covering and give you an opportunity to ask questions. So at this point, I will go ahead and pass it over to Ashley to cover our policies and procedures.
All right, thank you so much, Nina. So once again, I'm Ashley Boyer. I'm the Security and Compliance Specialist for HMIS. I'm the person who typically is sending out those quarterly self-audits. Sorry about that. We have another one coming up here pretty soon. So these policies and procedures that we're going to be talking about here are our local policies for managing our community's HMIS and everyone's input here. The HMIS team works with Sarah and our CHOs to determine best practices, and then any changes are agreed upon by the HMIS Advisory Committee. Go ahead, Nina. We have a couple different topics we're going to be talking about today. So we have some updates to our policies for our user license allocation for using HMIS, and we also have some slight changes to the quarterly self-audit procedures. So let's start with that user license allocation. So as you all probably know, none of you are charged for using HMIS. It is free to all of our users, but we do only have access to a limited number of licenses. We've been getting close to that limit for some time now. So what we've done is set some limits to the amounts of users an agency can have. This will help our team more effectively manage the number of licenses through our current vendor contract. Your agency's limit is going to be based on whatever category it falls into, either category A, B, C, or D. If your agency falls into multiple categories, then your limit is going to be based on your highest category. So as you can see on that table up here, if you fall into an A, B, and C category agency, then your limit is just going to stick with A. It's going to stick with the top limit being 50. If you're not sure where your agency falls here or why it falls where it does, we do have some keys on our website that shows what agencies and projects fall where and what those categories actually mean. The good news here is that if your agency is currently over the limits listed here, your current amount has already been grandfathered in. So if your agency, say, has 150 users right now, you'll get to keep all of those licenses and that limit is not going to go down. However, if you wish to add to that number, we will need your agency to submit a user license increase application, and that's going to be for consideration by the advisory committee. Go ahead, Nita. Now that increase application must be submitted by your agency's HMIS security officer. Before submitting, we do encourage all security officers to look at a list of their current active users to determine if any licenses can be reallocated to different staff members instead of just asking for new licenses for new users right away. After we receive those applications, the HMIS manager, that would be Nina, will present that to the HMIS committee on your behalf, and then she'll let the security officer know whether or not that has been approved. Also, if a user has their account deactivated due to inactivity 3 separate times, inactivity means that they have not logged in for 90 days, the security officer must request approval from the advisory committee for that account to be restored again. So essentially, if someone with an HMIS license is consistently going months at a time without using HMIS at all, it may be a good idea to start thinking about whether that license would be better utilized elsewhere. Now, that is it for the changes to the user license allocation. Let's go ahead and move on to that quarterly self-audit change. Okay, perfect. So good news to all of you security officers, we will actually be giving you less work from now on in these audits. We've received a lot of feedback telling us that these audits have been a lot of work and pretty time consuming for you all. So we just wanted to make sure that they were more manageable and honestly less redundant, since most of our CHOs have been doing a really great job managing their data and complying to those compliance procedures. Previously, we've asked our auditors to review 10% of all of their agency's users. Now we're bringing that down to just 5% of their users. Also, the percentage of client profiles you'll be asked to audit is now going to be based on your performance from the last quarter. So if your agency did a really great job and they only scored between 0 and 30% in that accuracy error rate category, then you're only going to be asked to audit 3% of your client's records. If you fell between 31 and 60% in your error rate, then you'll be asked to audit 5% of your client records. And then if you fall between 61 and 100% in your accuracy error rate, you're just going to stick with the current procedure and audit 10% of all of your client profiles. The good news is, using this system, most agencies will still fall into that first category, so most of you will be doing just that 3%. That is going to be everything for our policies and procedures.
Hi, everybody. Now I'll be going over the updates to our local data quality plan. So just a brief overview. The data quality plan is a community level document that assists the COC in achieving statistically valid and reliable data. The plan sets expectation for both the community and the end users. Next slide, please. So the updates to the data quality plan are as follows. The data quality plan monitoring workflow, data quality dashboard, auto exit and reopen days, and the 13-day rule. Next slide, please. So the update to the data quality plan and the monitoring workflow. So under the new plan, the data quality report will be sent out anywhere from the 1st to the 10th of each month. Previously, we sent out the data quality report anywhere from the 1st to the 5th, and we pushed back the dates back because the number of increasing projects in HMIS. Because of these pushback dates, the due date to correct the data quality report by the agencies has also pushed back. The new dates to correct the data quality report will be between the 10th and the 25th. So the corrections can be made anytime between those dates. The new date to submit the acknowledgement to the data quality report is on the 25th. And depending on the data quality report, your agency might match one or all of the following acknowledgement type below. So if your data quality report doesn't need any corrections, you simply have to acknowledge the receipt saying that you have received the data quality report and no correction is needed. But if there was any corrections needed in the data quality report, you can inform us that the corrections have been complete. And if there were any clients where the corrections was not possible, you can let us know the client ID and a brief explanation why the corrections was not possible. And if the data quality report didn't have any clients served, you can verify that the project should remain open. Another change in the new plan is who you send the acknowledgement to. Previously, it was sent to the HMIS data quality analyst, but moving forward, all the acknowledgement must be sent to hmis.support@havenforhope.org with the following subject line, DQ response, and your agency name. And by doing this, we will get the acknowledgement in the form of tickets, and it will help us with the documentation. Next slide, please. The data quality dashboard. The HMIS team are working on a visual dashboard in Tableau, which shows the data quality error for a project across months. In this dashboard, you have the option to view the data by month, project, and agency. So this is a great way to track the data quality error, as you can see the progress across the different months. And when you hover over individual colors, it will show your project name and the number of errors that project has. Currently, this dashboard is not available to the public, and we hope it make it available to users soon. Next slide, please. Auto exit days and reopen days for programs. So what is auto exit days? The auto exit day refers to the number of days where a client will be automatically exited from an enrollment due to inactivity. A client becomes inactive when they stop receiving services for a specific number of days. So if you see a value of -1 for auto exit days, that means the client won't be exited from that project. And the reopen days refers to the number of days a client enrollment can be reopened after they have been exited from that program. This also refers to the number of days a new enrollment can be created after the previous enrollment has been exited. So on the right-hand side, you can see a table where the recommended number of reopen days and the recommended number of auto exit days are based on project types. Also a note, the new recommended dates are only applicable to new projects going forward and won't affect the projects already in HMIS. Next slide, please. The 13-day rule. The 13-day rule was something that was already there, but we made it official this time. This rule will help to fill in the exit destination information if it's unknown for the client. So what the 13-day rule says is that user may update the exit destination of unknown destination type, such as no exit interview completed, client doesn't know, client refused, data not collected, to match the answer recorded in the prior residence data element from a subsequent HUD universal assessment. So the only rule is that the subsequent HUD universal assessment should be dated within 13 calendar days from the exit assessment. So I know this can be a little confusing. So there's an example scenario that I want to go through. So let's say a client got exited from a program from SAM with the exit destination, no exit interview completed, because for some reason you weren't able to contact the client at exit. But the following month, that client will come up in the data quality report for SAM project because in the exit assessment, no exit interview completed was selected. Now, what you can do to correct that data quality error is that you can use the 13-day rule. With the 13-day rule, you can go back to the client's profile and look for another enrollment that is dated 13 days from the original enrollment's exit destination that has the data quality error. If the client got enrolled into another program within 13 days from the exit assessment that has the error, you can look at the new enrollments HUD universal assessment, and within that assessment, you can look at the prior living situation, and you can update the exit destination that matches prior residence in the new enrollment. And that's how you can use the 13-day rule. And that should be all the updates to the data quality plan. Please let me know if you have any questions.
All right, so at this point, we are going to be switching gears. Now we are going to be switching to our federal updates that come from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. These updates are to the HMIS data standards. If you're not familiar with this document, this is a rather lengthy document that is released by HUD, usually each year, every other year, that outlines all of the data collection requirements for all project types and funding sources in the HMIS application. So, as I mentioned previously, on September 30th at 8 p.m., we will be implementing the updates so we can be in compliance as of October 1st. So we do have a lot of changes for you that we're going to cover. Some of them are going to, there are some changes behind the scenes that we're going to be working on internally, and there are going to be a lot of changes that you will see to the data elements in HMIS. So just to give you a quick overview of how those changes are broken up, we're going to start with the universal data elements. Those are going to be the data elements that are required for any and all projects that enter data into HMIS. Those are required across the board. As the name indicates, they are universally required. Next, we're going to go into the common program-specific data elements. Those are the ones that are going to be collected on most projects that enter data into HMIS. And then we're going to go a little bit more specific. We're going to jump into the COC-specific data elements, which is any project that receives COC funding is going to be required to collect those data elements. And then we are going to dive into the SSVF-specific data elements. There are some pretty significant changes for COC and SSVF, so please get your pens ready and make sure to take notes because there is going to be some action required for your projects on October 1st. So the first universal data element update that we have is going to be race. This is a data element that is found on the client's demographics page. So typically the first page of the workflow as you're enrolling the client into your program. And you might also see it on the client's profile if you need to navigate directly to their demographics page. So this update is pretty minor. It is simply an update to the description of each race option. So they did update the majority of the descriptions for this option. And as we're going over these universal and program specific changes, you'll notice that a lot of it is updates to the verbiage, which seems like a pretty minor change, but this is a really exciting change for our community, for our nation, really. HUD is actively taking steps to update the verbiage of HMIS and the HUD data standards to be more inclusive and more trauma informed. So you'll notice that they are sometimes more specific, not as generalized, and they're typically using a wider array of terminology to try to strive to be more inclusive and trauma informed. Now, these are some baby steps that we're seeing, but we have been notified by HUD that this is the first of many changes that are going to be coming. This is a series of changes that they're going to be making over the course of the next data standards updates. Those changes do have to come in small steps, though, just to make sure that we maintain the integrity of the data that we have in HMIS. But we are slowly working towards that goal of being more inclusive and trauma-informed from the federal level, which is really fantastic. So for this update, no action is going to be needed by HMIS users. All of the data will still be present based on what was selected before. And you'll notice on October 1st that the descriptions will be updated. The next one that we have is ethnicity. So this one is going to be very similar to race. It is an update to the description of the different options. So currently, the descriptions are listed as Latino and non-Latino. So what the update is going to be is it's going to kind of have, the description is going to be more inclusive. It's going to be Latina, Latino, and Latinx. So again, one of those updates that's intended to be more inclusive. And this is another one that's going to be found on the client's demographics page. And once again, no action is needed from HMIS users for this data element. It's still going to be the same dropdown that we are used to, and all of the data that has previously been entered will still be present in this data element. So we have one more update to the client's demographics. This one is a pretty substantial update. It won't look like a substantial update from the user's point of view, but as far as the logic, it is going to be a pretty big update. So what we are currently used to in HMIS is what we call a single select drop-down menu for gender. So if you can recall, the options that you currently have are male, female, there is transgender female, transgender male, and a few additional options as well. But you only have the option to select one, and it's based on what the client reports. So what you're going to see come October 1st is what we call a multi-select, indicating that you will be able to select multiple different options to best describe how the client identifies. So the example that I'll use is a transgender female. So if you have a client in your program right now who identifies as a transgender female, the option on their profile right now is likely the single select transgender female. Now on October 1st, what will happen is we are going to work some magic behind the scenes. We're going to do what we call, we're going to write a script, and it is going to update all of the data elements from the previous single select into the multi-select based on some mapping guidance that we have. So that client that is currently in your project that identifies as a transgender female, after October 1st, when you navigate to their demographics page, what you'll see is there will be two different options that are selected. They will have both female and transgender selected, and that will be the new description for the transgender female. Now, this is going to impact all of our reports that look at gender, which is it's a pretty basic element. So a significant number of the reports in HMIS do pull data from the gender field. So we are working diligently with our software vendor to update all of those reports to make sure that they continue to function properly after October 1st, considering this is a substantial update. But we do ask that if you have any trouble with any of your reports, whether custom or baseline after October 1st, please reach out to us immediately. We are going to do some very thorough testing to make sure that all of our reports are functioning appropriately. But in the event that you do have any difficulties, please reach out to us immediately so we can look into those reports. The next one that we have, so that concludes our universal data elements. Now we're going to switch gears to our program-specific data elements, and this is going to be our common program-specific data elements. These data elements in particular are found on the HUD program assessment. You might be familiar with them. Well, we currently see in HMIS these two different data elements. Number one, we see mental health problem, and the second one, we see substance abuse. So both of those are going to be updated, as well as the dependent options within the substance use. Mental health problem will be transitioned to mental health disorder, and substance abuse will be updated to substance use disorder. And the subsequent options will be updated to alcohol use disorder, drug use disorder, and both alcohol and drug use disorders. So this is intended to be a more trauma-informed description of these disorders rather than using negative descriptions like a mental health problem and substance abuse. We are going to more inclusive and more trauma-informed descriptions of these disorders. So these are going to be found on the HUD program assessment. And once again, this is just an update to the description, so no action is needed by HMIS users, but you will notice the update in the verbiage going forward. The next program-specific data element that we have is related to coordinated entry. As we all know, the coordinated entry event is a required data element. Every head of household that is enrolled in the HomeLink enrollment is required to have at least one coordinated entry event recorded on that enrollment. There are going to be 3 new options that were added to the event drop-down menu. So the new options that are going to be added are listed right here. So we have number 1, referral to emergency assistance / flex fund / furniture assistance. The next one is referral to emergency housing voucher. And the third one is referral to a housing stability voucher. So the way that you'll see these new options, the coordinated entry event is included in the HomeLink entry workflow. So as you're going through that workflow, when you get to the form that asks you to add the coordinated entry event, you will see those 3 new options in that location. Additionally, if you need to add another coordinated entry event after you complete the entry workflow, here's the click path where you'll find the new updates. You're going to look in the case management workspace. You're going to click on the case management tab, select coordinated entry events. At that point, you'll see a summary of all previously entered coordinated entry events, and you'll click add new in the top right-hand corner, and that will allow you to create the new assessment, and you'll see those new options there. Now, no action is needed for previously entered coordinated entry events. This will only affect coordinated entry events that are added going forward. And again, that is a HUD required data element. All head of households enrolled in the HomeLink enrollment are required to have this data element attached to their enrollment. So we are going to go ahead and briefly discuss our HOPWA updates. These updates are going to be specifically for our HOPWA providers. If you've never heard of that acronym before, then there's a good chance that these changes don't apply to you. We only have a handful of HOPWA providers in our community. So we're going to briefly cover the updates to HOPWA funded projects. We have 3 main updates. The first one is going to be to medical assistance. The second is going to be for T-cell and viral load. And the third one is going to be prescribed anti-retroviral. That's a hard one to say. Say that 5 times fast. So our updates to the HOPWA medical assistance, there is a new data element. This is going to appear on the HUD HOPWA assessment, and it is required for all individuals in the household who have HIV or AIDS. This element is required for those receiving Ryan White funded assistance for medical or dental through the HOPWA program. So you'll see these 2 questions. We have a screenshot of them for you here on the HOPWA assessments. The first one is receiving Ryan White funded medical or dental assistance. And the second one that you'll see is if you select no to the first one, there will be a dependent question asking for the reason that they are not receiving that type of assistance. So similar to some of the other data elements on the HOPWA assessment, it's a yes or no, and if no, the reason why. So again, that is going to be found on the HUD HOPWA assessment, required for all clients in a HOPWA funded program who have HIV or AIDS. The next one is an update to the T-cell and viral load data elements. You are used to seeing these questions already if you're a HOPWA provider, so they're not a brand new element, but there is some updates to the logic behind who the data is collected about. So this one has been updated to align with all other HOPWA data elements. So going forward, this one will also be required for family members in the HOPWA program who have HIV or AIDS. And this will also be found on the HUD HOPWA assessment. So previously it was required for only a certain portion of clients. Now it will be required, similar to other HOPWA programs, for all HOPWA clients who have HIV or AIDS as indicated on the HUD program assessment. The next one is prescribed antiretroviral. So this is going to be a brand new data element. This is a new element that you will see on the HUD HOPWA assessment. The question is, has the client been prescribed antiretroviral drugs? It is a yes or no answer, as well as client doesn't know, client refused, or data not collected. Now, as with all other data elements in HMIS that are required by HUD, you do have the option to select client doesn't know, client refused, or data not collected. But we do want to use those as little as possible, only when absolutely necessary, because it does result in missing data, which is a data quality error. And we want to try and limit and reduce those data quality errors as much as possible. So this new data element will appear on the HUD HOPWA assessment at program entry and program exit. And again, all HOPWA funded programs who have a client who responds yes to HIV or AIDS on the HUD program assessment, this question will appear on the HUD HOPWA assessment. It's going to be all clients in the program who answer yes for HIV or AIDS. So again, brand new data element that will appear on the HUD HOPWA assessment. Right, so the next round of updates that we have are going to be specific to COC funded programs, which everyone on this call does receive some sort of COC funding, I believe. So these will be relevant for everyone. A lot of these are going to be brand new data elements that you have never seen before. So what we've covered up until now was a lot of description updates and a few updates to existing elements. These are going to be some brand new data elements. So get ready, get your notes ready. Here we go. So the 4 main updates that we have for you, number 1 is going to be well-being. The next one we have is moving on assistance provided. We also have youth education status and general health. So our first one is well-being. So this is an interesting new data element. It is a series of 4 questions. They are going to be required for all COC funded permanent supportive housing projects. Now they are going to be required at project start, annual assessment, and project exit. Now the good news about this data element, back data entry is not going to be required for your existing clients that are active on October 1st. So what you're going to do is going forward, the next time that your client has an annual assessment or an exit assessment, you'll collect these data elements. So there are 4 questions total. The first one is client perceives their life has value and worth. The next one, client perceives they have support from others who will listen to problems. The next one, client perceives they have a tendency to bounce back after hard times. And then the last one is client's frequency of feeling nervous, tense, worried, frustrated, or afraid. So these are some interesting data elements. They're sort of more opinion-based. And the answer choices that you'll see are going to be kind of a scale. So it starts with strongly agree, then somewhat agree, then we have neither agree nor disagree, then we have somewhat disagree, and then strongly disagree. So again, those are going to be 4 brand new data elements. You will see these data elements on the HUD program assessment at project start, annual assessment, and project exit. And again, you do not need to go back and enter this information for clients that are currently enrolled in your project, but beginning on October 1st, you will need to collect them for the clients, specifically your head of households, in your COC funded PSH projects at project start, annual assessment, and project exit. It's really great that back entry is not required for this, because a lot of the COC funded PSH projects, because they're permanent housing clients, have been in the project for several years. So it's really great that back entry is not required, because going back and trying to identify a client's well-being, 4 or 5 years ago could be a little bit tricky. So it's really great that they're not requiring back entry. It only needs to be recorded going forward. So the next one that we have is moving on assistance provided. So moving on is a concept that's gaining popularity in HUD. And the way this is going to work, it's not actually going to be a data element that is recorded in the system, but rather it's recorded in the form of a service. So you SSVF guys are very familiar with this. It's similar to the way that SSVF services provided are recorded. You record them as a service, and we work some magic behind the scenes to make sure that when you run your next compliance report, all clients who have that service on their profile, that it captures it in the report for you. So this is going to be another one that is required for the head of household in all COC permanent supportive housing projects. And it's going to be recorded in the form of a service. So if your project is funded to provide this type of service, please reach out to the HMIS team so we can add this service type to your project. Again, it is a service. It's recorded as a service in HMIS. And then the HMIS team will work our behind the scenes magic to make sure that it is mapped to get credit for the moving on assistance provided field in your HUD compliance reports. The next one that we have is youth education status. So this is going to be required for all of our YHDP projects, the Youth Homeless Demonstration Program. That funding source is a subset of COC, and it is required for all of the project types that we have in our community. So that's going to be YHDP funded transitional housing, permanent supportive housing, services only, other, or rapid rehousing. So all of those project types are required to collect these new data elements. And this is going to be another data element that is found on the HUD program assessment, and it is required at both project start and project exit. So this one is going to be a little bit different than the well-being assessment. This one will require back entry. So what that means is on October 1st, what you'll need to do, there is some action needed. You'll need to gather a list of all of your clients that are actively enrolled in your YHDP program as of October 1st. And you'll need to go into their HUD program assessment and fill in these missing fields. So it is a series of 3 data elements on the HUD program assessment. So the first one is current school enrollment and attendance. The second is most recent educational status. And the third is current educational status. So I'm going to log into the training environment and show you an example of what it will look like to complete the back data entry that's required for this data element for your actively enrolled clients. So I'm going to log into the training environment. So what I'm going to do on October 1st, I'm going to get my list of all of my clients that are actively enrolled. And I'm going to go to each profile. I'm going to search for my client profile. And what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to start by clicking on Client Assessments. And I'm going to go to the HUD Assessments. Now, as I mentioned, these data elements are collected on the HUD Program Assessment. So I'm going to find the icon for the HUD Program Assessment. Now, once I get here, this is the summary of all of the HUD program assessments. So I'm going to look for the one for my specific program, and very important to look for the assessment events of at entry. Once I find that assessment, I'm going to click on the widget over here and click edit. That's going to open up my HUD program assessment that was completed at entry. And what I'll notice is there's going to be a new section here titled Education, and I'll see those 3 data elements listed here, and they will be blank. So what I need to do at that point is go through and fill in the missing questions. And what I'm aiming for here is I want to identify what the client's education status was as of this date right here. Now, not as of today's date. We don't want to know where they're at today because we want the information to be accurate as of the assessment date. So I want to identify what the client's education status was on the date that this particular assessment was completed. Once I've filled in those answers, I'm going to click Save, and my HUD program assessment has been updated with the new data elements. And that's that. That is an action that's going to be required for these data elements to fill in the missing data for the clients that are active as of October 1st. The next one is actually an RHY data element, but it is now going to be applicable for HUD COC permanent supportive housing projects. It is the general health status question. It is going to be required for the clients enrolled in your permanent supportive housing project, and it's going to be collected at project start and project exit. It's just one question, general health status, and the options are going to be excellent, very good, good, fair, or poor. And then, of course, you have your client doesn't know, client refused, or data not collected. This was historically an RHY, a runaway homeless youth data element, but it is now expanding to all HUD COC permanent supportive housing projects. And it's just one question, it's the general health status. And this one will also appear on the HUD program assessment. All right, the final portion of our presentation is going to cover the updates to the SSVF funding, which is short for Supportive Services for Veteran Families. So these questions are specific to the VA SSVF funded program. So these are going to be some pretty substantial changes. We have a lot of new data elements that are coming, so get ready. The first one is actually the minor update that we have. It's going to be an update to the financial assistance. So there's going to be some updates to the types of services that are provided. So there are going to be 2 new service types added, and 1 will actually be removed. So the 2 that are added are going to be food assistance and general housing stability assistance. So these are going to be, again, similar to the moving on assistance provided that we discussed earlier. The way they work in our system is you record the service on the client's profile connected to your SSVF enrollment, and the HMIS team does some magic behind the scenes so that that service gets you credit for that type of financial assistance on your compliance reports for that client. And then again, emergency services is going to be removed. Off the top of my head, I don't believe we have any projects who currently record that service, but if your project does record that service, that one will be removed as a financial assistance option for VA SSVF programs. Now we're going to jump into the VA HP targeting criteria. Now this is going to be a very substantial update to this section of the HUD program assessment. So I want to make sure that everyone is paying very close attention. These are data elements that are required for the head household or all SSVF funded homeless prevention projects. So I know we have some people on the line who work specifically with the SSVF funded homeless prevention projects. So this is going to be substantial updates to the section of the HUD program assessment that is the HP targeting criteria. So there's going to be 4 slides total that are dedicated to the updates to this section. First, we're going to talk about the fields that were removed. Then we're going to talk about the fields that are added. Then additionally, there are 4 fields that have been updated. So we're starting with the fields that are removed. So these 6 fields have been removed from the HUD program assessment for the HP targeting criteria section. So those 4 are referred by coordinated entry. Current household income is $0. Sudden and significant decrease in cash income. Major change in household composition. Any veteran in household served in Iraq or Afghanistan. And finally, female veteran. So again, those 6 data elements will be removed from the assessment altogether. However, the data is still stored in the database and will still be available for prior reporting. So they're still going to be there, they're just going to be hidden and are no longer going to be required. So those 6 data elements are going to disappear from the HP targeting criteria. Now we also have 7 data elements that are being added. Again, on the HP targeting criteria on the HUD program assessment required for the head of household for SSVF HP projects. The 7 added fields. So we have homeless prevention targeting screener required. Client is current leaseholder. Has head of household ever been a leaseholder? Incarcerated as adult. Discharged from jail or prison within the last 6 months after incarceration of 90 days or more. Currently pregnant. And current or recent resident in area prioritized by the COC. So these 7 data elements are going to be brand new, and you'll see them on the HP targeting criteria assessment section of the HUD program assessment at entry. So 6 data elements have been removed, 7 data elements have been added. Now let's jump into the fields that have been updated. So the first 2 that we have, the annual household gross income amount. That's what you're used to currently seeing. On October 1st, it will be updated to read current household income. And there are some new response options. So the first response option is going to be $0. For example, if not employed, not receiving cash benefits, or no other current income. The next one is going to be 1 to 14% of AMI, or area median income, for household size. The next option is 15 to 30% of AMI for household size. And then we have more than 30% of AMI for household size. Now, some of the data will be scripted in. As you can see here, the prior data will be scripted into the new data element based on the previous response from the data element that was removed that was titled Current Household Income is $0. If you see the word script, that's just our way of saying that we're going to work some magic behind the scenes to plug in the new data elements. So that's our first question that is going to be updated. Now, the second one is history of literal homelessness. This is going to have some new response options. It is most recent episode occurred within the last year. The second one is most recent episode occurred more than 1 year ago. And then the third one is none, indicating that they have no history of literal homelessness. So there are no mapping options for this data element, meaning that we cannot script in or plug in the data element, the responses for this question. So this data element will be left blank for active clients, but it does not have to be back entered. So you'll see the blank on the client's HUD program assessment, but there is no requirement to back enter the data for active clients. So our last 2 fields that are going to be updated, rental evictions within past 7 years, the response options are going to be updated. So the new options that you'll see is 4 or more prior rental evictions. The next one is 2 or more prior rental evictions. The third option is 1 prior rental eviction, and the final option is no prior rental evictions. Now, no action is going to be needed on this particular data element. The prior data from the previous version of this question will be scripted into the new data element, which again is our fancy way of saying we're going to work the magic behind the scenes to plug in the old data into the new data field. So no action will be needed on this data element. On October 1st, you will see the new answer choices, and the data will already be reported for your existing clients. Now, the last updated question, we currently see this question listed as at least 1 dependent child under age 6. Now, come October 1st, the new question will read, household includes 1 or more young children age 6 or under, or a child who requires significant care. And the answer choices are going to be no, youngest child is under 1 year old, youngest child is 1 to 6 years old, and or 1 or more children any age require significant care. And once again, in this one, just as we saw with the last one, the prior data from the current question will be scripted into the new data element. So on October 1st, when you see this new question appear, all of your active clients will already have this answer recorded for this data element based on what was answered to the prior question. So once again, no action will be needed for this particular question. So overall, the entire HP targeting criteria assessment is getting some pretty substantial updates. So it will look very different the next time we see it after October 1st. So those are going to be the updates. That's definitely the most significant update of all of the 2022 updates. So please reach out to us if you do have any questions, if you run into any issues with this assessment. And that does conclude our presentation. So of course, we want to thank you guys so much for joining us today. We know how valuable your time is, and we greatly appreciate you taking the time to spend an hour or so with us and learn about these really important updates to our data elements. The best way to get in contact with us, as always, is going to be through our ticketing system. That is HMIS.support@havenforhope.org. We do always have a team member monitoring tickets. One of the team members that you met today. So there's always going to be someone ready and waiting to answer any questions that you might have or assist you with any difficulties that you might be experiencing. We do also encourage you to schedule or request any additional trainings that you like. We are always happy to conduct additional training sessions. The way to contact us to request the training sessions are your training coordinator, Sophie Barron. That is her phone number there if you have any questions about the request process. Or, of course, again, you can submit a ticket to HMIS.support@havenforhope.org, and we will be more than happy to assist you with your request. So thank you guys so much for joining us. I do hope you enjoy the rest of your day,